All of these questions that help us come to the perception of value, ideas, evaluating information. Now here's what's important: to have a good set of mental scales. What if in processing information your mental scales were off? And you weighed everything a little wrong? Do you think that would affect your life? The answer is, of course. And all you got to be is a little off for 10 years. And you can imagine what the difference is. I got a key phrase for you. Life accumulates. We either accumulate the debt or the value. We either accumulate the regret or we accumulate the equity. Now, we must all suffer one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And I'm suggesting discipline, mental discipline to refine ideas. Of course it's laborious, and of course it's a push, but it's called small price to pay so that you won't have the regret later on. Regret weighs tons. Discipline weighs ounces. So if you accept the early ounces of discipline of thought to refine ideas and not just let major questions go by, what about society? What about the government? What about taxes? What about religion? What about life? What about capital? What about business? What about society? All of these major questions. What about my life and my value and my place and my future? And what about life? What about origin? What about destiny? What about opportunity? What about possibility? All of these major questions, to let them go casually by is to miss the treasures that your life could accumulate into in the coming months, the coming years. So this is called major. What we ponder and what we think about sets the course of our life. It's like the set of the sail that's taking us somewhere. Let me give you a good question to write down. Where are my thoughts taking me? This is a biggie question. Where are my thoughts taking me? These are some of the things you want to make sure of. You might be able to be casual about some things, but here's some things not to be casual about. My philosophy is taking me somewhere. Big question, where? The accumulation of equity will either be there or won't be there. Life accumulates. And I'm either accumulating debt that I'll be sorry for, or I'm accumulating value that I'll be happy about. Okay, philosophy. The first major piece in the 5 major pieces. Here's number 2. Attitude. Attitude's how you feel. First of all, we're affected by what we know. Second, we're affected by how we feel about what we know. The emotional part now. This is a major part of the 5 pieces. How I feel. Now, there's a lot of different ways to feel. Here's one. If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late on the job. Right? We call that one way to feel. Isn't that a selection process? If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late. We call that your choice of attitude. Now, do you think that attitude, if you kept it for the next 5 years, would greatly affect your fortunes? The answer is, of course. You cannot escape the accumulated effect of the selection of your attitude. You can't escape it. So one of the major things to check is, how do I feel? And am I on track or off track with my attitude? Now, attitude's not that easy to fix. It's not that easy to get information. It's hard to look up attitude in the yellow pages. If you could put your car in the shop and go next door and get your attitude tuned, wouldn't that be nice, right? But where do you go? How do we engage in the kind of philosophical thinking that will refine our attitude to give us a chance for future fortune rather than what will be missing in the future? So this is big, attitude. Here's another attitude. No matter what they pay, I always come early and I always stay late to invest in my own future. We call that another attitude about the same job. Now, why would one person have one attitude, another person have another attitude? We call that mysteries of the mind. Right? I don't know. Everybody has to choose for themselves. Everybody has to decide by education. Now, if you didn't know what the consequences were going to be, it could be very easy to choose the wrong attitude and not discipline yourself to the right attitude. So a big portion of our life is affected by how we feel. Let me give you just a quick list about the feelings that affect our lives. Number one, it's how you feel about the past. Boy, it's easy to carry the past as a burden instead of as a school. It's easy to let the past overwhelm you instead of let the past instruct you. How to feel about the past hurts and the past losses and the past difficulties and the times you failed and the times it didn't work, the accumulation of all of that. How you feel about that is going to greatly affect your future in your life. One of the major things that affects your life is how you feel about the future. Our life is affected by two major things. One is price and the other is promise. And it's not that easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. I think kids are having problems these days trying to pay the price because they can't see the promise. But all of us wouldn't mind paying the price if we could have a clear view of tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. If we had the high assurance with great probability of how it's going to work out, do you think we would hesitate to pay? The answer is no. But everybody hesitates to pay if the future isn't clear. So to help the kids these days, we got to do two things. Help them to see the promise and help them pay the price. But we can pay if we can see. My karate instructor said, Mr. Rohn, you cannot believe the incredible feeling of walking down any city street unafraid. I said, let's get on with the classes, right? Hey, I will sweat. I will put myself through the paces, right? What would we do for an extraordinary promise? Answer, the most unbelievable things. Would you crack the books? Would you burn the midnight oil? Would you engage in the extra thoughts and the extra disciplines if the promise was adequate? And the answer is, of course. But who wants to read? Who wants to burn the midnight oil? Who wants to put themselves through the paces if the promise isn't clear? Important, price and promise. Here's number three. It's how you feel about each other. It's so important. Attitude about society, country, state and city, community, family, enterprise, office, company, corporation, division. It's so important to have a unique understanding about other human beings and what makes a good life, what constitutes a good life. How you feel about each other. I've got a good phrase for you. You can't succeed by yourself. So to have a unique, refined sense of appreciation for each other is prerequisite. It takes each other to build a society. It takes all of us to build a country, to build a nation. It takes all of us to build a community. Key phrase, you can't succeed by yourself. I gave a speech not long ago to the Rotary Club of Culver City, California, and I was unusually affected by the Pledge of Allegiance that day. Big, strong voices. It's a big, strong club. And it was going through my mind the next few days, the Pledge of Allegiance. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what an important key document, right? The Pledge of Allegiance. And so I started writing, and I wrote a discourse on the Pledge of Allegiance. I took each key word and did a little summary for our Tape of the Month Club. Wow, the Pledge of Allegiance is unique. It starts with I and ends with all. The pledge starts with I and ends with all. It takes all of us to make any one of us successful. And a unique, refined appreciation of the all of us is what makes the I of us do much better. That appreciation of society. It takes all of us to make a market. We need each other's ideas and inspiration. And once you have that sense of appreciation of the all of us, now you and your place and your possibilities and your opportunities now start to really soar when you understand how important it is within the framework of the all of us. So you can't succeed by yourself. It's hard to find a rich hermit. Right? Now here's the big biggie. It's how you feel about yourself. That's major. Understanding self-worth is the beginning of progress. How valuable are you? What could you do if you had all the skills? If you took the extra classes and burned the midnight oil, what could you do? What true value could you become? That is one of the better exercises. What could I become in terms of value? What could I really do in the marketplace, in enterprise, family, home, love, experience, marriage, friendship? How valuable could I become? Am I valuable enough to work on what all is still not functioning in my life to full capacity? If I'm operating at 20%, what could I possibly do with the other 80%? And do I have it in knowledge and worth and value and experience? Once you start understanding this part of you, understanding how valuable you are, it is a whole new experience, understanding self-worth. So attitude plays a big, major part in how our life works out. Number 1 is philosophy. Number 2 is attitude. Number 3 is activity. Activity is what you do. So our lives, first of all, are affected by what we know. Second, our lives are affected by how we feel. Third, our lives are affected by what we do. It is so important to understand this. If you want to influence and help people, here's the key. Success is a doing. You've got to actually do it. Activity is high priority in the life process to try to get maximum benefit out of what we have available. Activity. Now, here's an important question. What is your philosophy about activity? What about hard work? What about long hours? What about full days? If you're doing something, how hard should you go at it? How much time should you put in? Everybody has to develop their philosophy about activity. Just by way of review, let me quote you. Old Testament says, 6 days activity, 1 day rest. That's called philosophy of ratio of activity. What is a good ratio of rest and activity? Old Testament says 6 days of one, 1 day of the other. You say, well, that's kind of old and outmoded. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe that's too old a philosophy. The old 6-1. I don't know. Who knows? Now, we've got it down to 5 and 2. Maybe 5 and 2 is okay. I don't know. If God would have thought of 5 and 2, he might have made it 5 and 2. Right? You can't think of everything when you're putting one of these together, I guess. Who knows? But we've all got to have a philosophy about activity. Because your philosophy of activity will affect the rest of your life. Not to think so is naive. I've got a good clue on rest. Make rest a necessity, not an objective. The reason for life is enterprise. The reason for life is productivity. The reason for life is to see what we can do with the seasons and the chances and our mind and our spirit, ourselves, to see what we can do. That's what life is all about, to see what you can do. Now, the doing, you've got to have a philosophy on how much time you're going to spend doing. And I've decided that enterprise is better than ease. If you rest too long, the weeds take the garden in the summer. So you can't rest too long. Life doesn't stand still. And the threat of life will start overwhelming the values of life if you just let it go. So we've all got to have a philosophy about activity. Let me give you one of the best I know. Here's what it says. An ancient phrase says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. That's a philosophy. You say, well, I'm getting by with half my might. Well, okay. But you've got to decide on your own personal philosophy of activity. Now, this philosophy says, do it with all your might. Do you think there's any value or virtue in that? Well, I don't know. You've got to decide. You've got to weigh this out, right? You've got to evaluate it for yourself and put it on your own mental scales, and you've got to come up with your own answers. How hard should you work? I'm teaching kids now the ant philosophy. The ant philosophy. An ancient story says everybody should study ants, especially lazy people. The ant philosophy. Let me give it to you. It's very brief. Number 1, ants never quit. Good philosophy. If they're headed somewhere, you try to stop them, they'll look for another way. They'll climb over, they'll climb under, they'll climb around, they keep looking for another way. What a neat philosophy. Never quit looking for a way to get where you're supposed to go. Number 2, ants think winter all summer. That's an important philosophy. You can't be so naive as to think summer all summer. You say, well, isn't it nice? You can't think nice when it's nice. We will call you naive. An ancient story says, don't build your house on the sand in the summer. Why would we be given that advice? Because it's easy to build your house on the sand in the summer, but you must not be so disillusioned. So ants are smart. They think winter all summer. In the summer, you got to think storm. You got to think rock. You can't think sand and sun. Key philosophy. Number 3, ants think summer all winter. That's so important. I'm sure all winter long ants say, this won't last long, we'll soon be out of here. What a neat philosophy, what a neat attitude. This won't last long, we'll soon be out of here. First warm day, the ants are out. First warm day, they're out. Now if it turns cold again, they'll dive back down, but first warm day, they're out. They can't wait to get out. What a neat philosophy, can't wait to get at it. We teach in leadership skills. Average people look forward to getting off. Successful people look forward to getting on with it. The guy doesn't want off, he wants on. And that's what starts to transform his life, into the doing, into the activity. Now here's the last of the ant philosophy. How much will an ant gather during the summer to prepare for the winter? Answer, all he possibly can. What an incredible philosophy, the all you possibly can philosophy. How much should you do? You got to come up with a philosophy of how much should you do. We're all governed by our thinking, our evaluation, what we've decided and how we feel. And this is a big question. What should you do? Schoff gave me the best answer when I was 25 years old. Here's what he said. Do all you can. How many books should you read in the next 6 months? As many as you can fit into your schedule. Because the book you miss won't help. What if a guy missed the book, Think and Grow Rich? The guy's 40 and poor and he missed the book. He lived in the right country, but he missed the book. He was a nice guy, but he missed the book. He was very sincere, but he missed the book. He worked hard, but he missed the book. I'm telling you, if you miss the book, no telling what treasure will be missing in your life if you just miss the book. How hard should you work? The ant philosophy. The man says to me, I'm making about $50,000 a year. Isn't that enough? Now, what would be your philosophical answer to someone who says, I'm making $50,000 a year. Isn't that enough? He said, my kids are doing okay. And he said, I got my bills paid. So what would you say if a guy says, I'm making $50,000 a year. Isn't that enough? I said, yes, $50,000 a year is enough if it's the best you can do. We don't call enough an amount. We only call enough your best. If you're capable of making $500,000 a year and you make $50,000 a year, we call you loser. Now, it isn't the difference between $50,000 and $500,000 that's important. What's important is the full extent of your reach. That's what's important. The only way to feel maximum good about yourself is to extend yourself to the full capacity of your reach, your intellectual reach and your physical reach, and your potential and your possibility to do the best you can. What should you do? All you can. How many books should you read? As many as you can. How many skills should you learn? As many skills as you can. How many people should you touch? As many as you can. What all should you engage in? As many things as you can. Why not go to the max? I've got a good question for you. How tall will a tree grow? As tall as it can. Did you ever hear of a tree growing half as high as it could? No. Trees don't grow half. They grow all. Full. They drive their roots as deep as they can, stretch as high as they can, produce every leaf they can. Trees go to the max. Now, why would human beings settle for less than the max of their capacity? Simple answer. They have the power of choice to do so. It gives us the dignity of being human beings called the power of choice. So we've got a couple of choices. Let me give them to you. Here they are. To be all or to be part. Now, this is a philosophical discussion. You can choose to be less than you were designed to be, or you can choose to be all you were designed to be. I'm merely suggesting that you ponder what the all might do for your life in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. If you refined your philosophy of activity and went for it all. So the difference in value is not the amount. If you do the best you can and you make $10,000 a year, we call that enough. If you do the best you can and you make $1 million a year, we call that Enough. Enough is not the difference between 10,000 and a million. Enough is simply doing the best you can. A group of psychiatrists invited me to come and lecture in Los Angeles. Not too long ago, I thought that was fascinating. I never graduated from college. But they wanted to hear my story, so I go talk to the psychiatrists. Then in the middle of my talk, I had the audacity to say, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what I think most messes with the mind. They said, what do you think most messes with the mind? I said, I think it is simply doing less than you can. Messes with the mind. It causes all kinds of psychic damage, I think. Simply being less than you can be. Doing less than you could do. Trying less than you could try. Doing it with less enthusiasm than you could. I think it somehow damages the mind. It damages our self-image. Because here's what I've discovered happens. The minute you turn this around and start extending yourself, it isn't the value you get from extending yourself that's the greatest value. It's how you feel about yourself that's the greatest value. Because, see, it's not what we get that makes us valuable. It's what we become. And part of becoming is to see what all you can become. See what all you can do. See how much you can earn, how much you can share, how much you can start, how far you can reach, how far you can extend your influence. Now, that kind of commitment to philosophical thinking about attitude and about activity, we call this the potential for life change. The 5 major pieces to the life puzzle, we've covered 3 of them. Number 1 is philosophy, number 2 is attitude, number 3 is activity, number 4, I'm sure you're ahead of me, results. Results is the name of the game. The quest of life is to see, 1, what we can become, 2, what we can accomplish. What we can become and what we can accomplish. The key to life is to become skillful enough to do rewarding things with our life. Influence, productivity, activity, results, economic, social, personal, spiritual. But results is the name of the game. It's the reason for the seasons is in the fall to see what has come from the miracle of your hand and the seed and the soil and the seasons and the rain, the changes, to cope with it all and to see what you can make out of what's available. One of the most interesting ancient stories said, a master had 3 servants and he gave them talents. Talents is simply value. Philosophy is to determine value. And once you understand that you have value, the key is to see what you can do with it. And here was the commission that the master gave his 3 servants. He gave one 5 talents, the other one 2, and the third one 1 talent. And his commission was, see what you can do with these values. And that's what life is all about. See what you can do with your mind. See what you can do with your skills. See what you can do with your hands. See what you can do with your thinking, your possibilities, your capabilities. The key is to see what you can do with it all, because results is the name of the game. And he said, I'll be gone for a while, and when I return, we'll go over the results. Here's all life expects us to do: make measurable progress in reasonable time. Now, according to the story, the master evidently was gone reasonable time. We can't ask every 5 minutes, how are you doing now? Right? That's unreasonable. And we can't wait 5 years, that'd be too late. So that's what we call reasonable time to ask, how are you doing now? What progress have you made now in this long list of human values and experiences? So the master, having been gone, evidently reasonable time, came back, got the 3 servants together and asked one of life's most important questions. How did you do? In the time that was gone, what progress did you make? What results did you show? He asked this servant who had 5 talents what happened, and that servant said, I turned 5 into 10. Those numbers, I think, are very important, 5 and 10. Do you think they have any significance? I think in higher learning they have very much significance. Now, in average learning, it probably doesn't matter. But in higher learning, we say it's very important to understand the numbers. Key life question, should we be expected to double our values in reasonable time? Answer, of course. Shouldn't we be expected to make progress? How many years do you want your child to spend in 4th grade? About 1. You say, well, if they're nice kids, would you give them 3 or 4 years? You say, no. You can't give your child 4 years to get through 4th grade. That's too much time to make